Come see us on tour in Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Co-Host, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Los Angeles, Bakersfield, San Jose, Toledo, Ohio, and Toronto, Ontario. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Liberals seem to have embraced science as a form of religion, and it can't be questioned. And where do you think this need to worship big pharma or science or institutions come from? I mean, where do you think that comes from?
This may, I don't know if I'll be able to express this and do it justice the way I'm thinking. The government and even the military are all wrapped up in the promotion of vaccines, not just for the military, but for the general population, in ways that I don't even fully understand, but that I ran across. I believe there is a psychological operations. It's a warfare operations that our government helps with, where they're using psyops tactics to divide the public, to controversialize the issues, to make the questions untouchable, to get people, they understand through whatever studies they've done of human nature and people, what words they can use, what they can do on social media to get people to, have this kind of blind loyalty and not question, and then pit them against the others and make it a political issue. I think there are puppeteers pulling all of these strings, and that this is the result.
It certainly seems like the people who attacked me for asking normal questions and reporting facts that I found during COVID seemed, now it makes sense that they were under the influence of a psyop, and they didn't know it, because they certainly acted like they were brainwashed, because they were brainwashed and brain dead. And to the point where, I've come from comedy, and comedians are always supposed to be poking holes in the status quo and questioning authority. That's the whole point. The court jester is the one who's allowed to tell the truth to the king. But even comedians, that to me, which was the biggest heartbreak for me, to see my profession completely bend the knee and become under the controls of a psyop, would shame people and even their audiences. They would go on stage and tell their audiences, don't do your own research, which is telling people to don't question authority and stay ignorant and just trust the man on the TV. It's just mind-boggling to me that that's where we've come. People, so you're explaining it as they're really a victim of a psyop.
I believe so, because I believe they're honest thinking people or well-meaning people who believe what they're saying. I think there are bad journalists who report as if they've discovered a firsthand fact, something they clearly haven't studied or read up on. I watch, it's just almost comical to watch reporters debate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I think arguably knows more about these issues we've discussed than any top political figure, maybe ever. And to have a journalist who clearly hasn't done their research, who's just buying into the narratives of people who haven't told the truth in the past, to have a journalist tell Kennedy to his face he's wrong about this or that, when he's right. I happen to know because I have done 20 years of research, a lot of this stuff. And no one's calling the journalist out. The journalist is just claiming something false is true. And Kennedy is left there to try to say, well, no, that's not true, and it's just a crazy dynamic. As you're disappointed in comedians, I'm very disappointed in supposed journalists who should be asking, like you say, challenging the status quo. That's what we're supposed to do as well, as needed, and bring truth to light without worrying about the consequences from, the powerful interests.
So, you all also refer to the CDC as the Center for Data Control instead of what they're supposed to be. So how do they control all the data?
Listen, I had a litany of examples of how they misrepresented all kinds of figures in ways that I believe cannot have been an accident during COVID. Because if you look at the list, every time they misrepresented a figure or made a mistake in the data or something they publicized about how deadly COVID was to children in particular, it turned out to err on the side of making it seem much more dangerous to children than it was. It was never err on the side of, making it seem less dangerous. It was always overinflating. That's what they do when the flu comes every year. This is sort of an MO that I recognize. But they were mistakes in data from the CDC that were of a magnitude that's just incredibly unforgivable. This is an agency that should be careful about its data. I quoted one reporter who had written a medical journal article that got published in some statistical type of journal. She counted a bunch of them. She even contacted CDC to point out persistent errors that remained on the site years after COVID about data and falsely implying things were more dangerous with COVID than were, or maybe the vaccine was better than it was. And they just still didn't want to change stuff. They wanted to stick by the bad information, even when proven wrong, and the bad facts and the bad graphs. They just have all kinds of way to put out bad science.
So, this book is really, everybody should read this book, and this should be taught in not only journalism classes, it should be taught in medical schools. How did you get HarperCollins to publish this book?
Well, this is interesting. HarperCollins published my other, I think, 3 books. They came to me with this idea.
No.
I was as surprised as you are. And I kind of wondered, would it ever get published? I mean, in the back of my mind, I've seen too many stories be canceled, too many congressional hearings that were definitely going to happen to look at this stuff be canceled at the last minute. But initially, my editor, HarperCollins, asked me to write a book on the COVID missteps, which is a bit of this book goes over that. But I said, by the time this book comes out, which was last September, that will have been pretty well covered by others. I mean, there's some fabulous books, including by Kennedy on, Dr. Fauci and so on. And I said, let's branch this out to the bigger picture, not just what happened during COVID, because people will be stunned. And I will say that the editor who says, Eric, he says he considers himself pretty well informed on these topics. He called me at some point after he read the book and he said, 90% of Americans, even those who know about this, think they know about this stuff, will not know about 80% of what's in this book. Like, he was floored at the anecdotes and the citations and the inside information. And that made me feel really good, because that was the goal, is to try to expose some common things that we're all subjected to in our daily lives. We just have no idea that's happening.
Have you experienced blowback in your own professional or private life from exposing this kind of stuff about modern medicine, big pharma, vaccines?
Not directly lately. Definitely back when I was at CBS, and there were certain bosses that wanted me to continue covering these stories, including the dangers of statins, including all kinds of things. But then there was definitely an effort to stop that reporting. There's this push me, pull you going on inside the corporation, as I think was happening at other media outlets. Yeah, that wasn't pleasant, because there were pharmaceutical interests and government officials calling CBS, trying to stop my stories, calling bosses. They would go to parties and talk to my colleagues and tell them my stories had to be stopped, or that they were wrong, or it was just stirring the pot a lot. That's certainly not a pleasant, place to be in. But I'm kind of stubborn, and I always think, when there's that much pushback over something you're reporting, it must really be important. And it makes me kind of more committed to trying to get at the truth. That's how I've treated it. I haven't heard anything about this book. I was very careful, obviously, legally, fact-checking, doing all this stuff over and over and over again with this book. But they kind of leave me alone now. Maybe they do stuff behind my back, but I feel like they don't want to draw attention. It would almost draw more attention to the book to complain about it or try to point things out that they don't like.
I lost lots of friends. People I've known for 30 years attacked me over COVID. And when I said, hey, schools shouldn't be locked down, this is going to be worse for kids, not actually dangerous to kids, just like you said, the virus, and we shouldn't be mandated. I mean, people I've known my whole life turned on me and called me a grifter and said I was doing this for clicks and money, and which was the exact opposite. They demonetized most of those videos.
Right. That's
It's
right.
the exact opposite, right? And even when I go to dinner parties, right, when I used to get invited to them, I would, bring up the idea that, when we were kids, we got maybe 6 vaccines. Now that's 72 shots are on the schedule, and their eyes would just bug out. And then I would say, the first one they give them is the hepatitis vaccine, which you can only get hepatitis through drug use, intravenous drug use, or sex And why are they giving that to a baby? And I've had doctors say to me, like, what? That's the first one they give? I've had doctors say that to me at parties, like they don't get it. And then people just don't want to talk to me anymore. It's like I'm the RFK at the party.
That's happened to me. I get it.
That's happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like other journalists don't want to talk about this stuff. I would say it's changed a little since COVID. If you can look at any positive that came from COVID, I don't know if you've noticed this as well. There are a lot of people that weren't paying much attention to all of the things we talked about today, kind of like I was pre-2000, trusting of the medical establishment and your own doctors and thinking there can't be that kind of corruption. And I think a lot of eyes were open and people suddenly realized, well, if the government lied to us about this stuff, the wheels start turning. Well, what else have they lied to us about? And it made activists out of people that never considered themselves activists. They're very concerned when you're talking about their family's health and their health. This suddenly became very important. So I think even for a lot of doctors, you probably talked to Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and people like that. They were very much on with the mainstream narratives and so stunned by what happened and what they learned that they now have started these, I would argue, sort of movements, alternative ideas that really should be the mainstream about getting to the bottom of what's causing us to be so sick, not just treating it and getting at the heart of the corruption. So I think some good has come of it. People have come out of the shadows on this more than they were before COVID.
Well, it's an amazing book. Sharyl Attkisson, Follow the Science. Everybody should get this. It's available where all books are available because it's published by Harper. When I saw that it was published by HarperCollins, my jaw was on the floor. I can't believe it.
Well, good on HarperCollins. We should all be happy that they did that.
I mean, I've been censored many times on YouTube for saying some of the things or just asking the questions. Anyway, I really appreciate you, Sharyl Attkisson. Thank you so much for coming on. Everybody should check out that book, and I appreciate, your courage and the work that you keep doing. It's really fantastic.
Well, you too, and I think people probably who listen to you understand when you step out the way you have, how important that is and how many people you reach. I think that's awesome, and they should know, as you do, that it's not an easy thing to do. So, thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, hopefully we can talk to you again soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Come see us on tour in Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohost, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Los Angeles, Bakersfield, San Jose, Toledo, Ohio, and Toronto, Ontario. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.